Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In this video, we're going to be looking into the unique tech Cuman Mercenaries, which gives every teammate, regardless of their civilization, the opportunity to create a modest number of their own Elite Kipchaks. So let's discuss which civilizations benefit the most and the least from this unusual opportunity. Just to quickly recap how the tech works if you don't know all the ins and outs, for 650 food and 400 gold in Imperial Age, a Cuman player can research this technology, after which everyone on their team, including themselves, can then create 5 free Elite Kipchaks from each castle they've already built, unlocking another 5 for each castle they construct after that point. They're automatically Elite Kipchaks every time, even if an ally is in Castle Age themselves. And depending on how many teammates you have and castles in total, the individual price averaged across all of those potential units starts to be pretty cheap, working out to less than 20 resources per unit in an extreme example, though it's already technically a good deal with as few as 3 castles. Strangely, unlike how mercenaries work in real life, in this case it's the Cumans that are paying for them, and not the players using the mercenaries, while the mercenary units also reflect your technologies and bonuses research instead of the Cumans. This is where our topic comes in, and actually Cuman's missing bracer means their own Kipchaks are surprisingly middle of the road, and I'd say not even top 10. Now just to give a quick refresher for what Kipchaks are good for, they're functioning quite similar to a cavalry archer. Unfortunately, they have relatively low HP, which isn't ideal for a unit you have a limited supply of, and also have low base attack, but fire 3 extra arrows, which are the same type as Chukanu. In many cases, they end up having pretty similar or a little less damage output compared to cavalry archers with the same upgrades, even against things like elite skirmishers. The big exception is against rams, where an elite Kipchak does about 8 times as much damage as a heavy cavalry archer, and even 60% more than an elite Mangadai. So Cuman Mercenaries gives you a set of free cavalry archer equivalent units who have a bit of an extra anti-ram specialty. Obviously, a lot of this list is going to be correlated with the best and worst cavalry archer civilizations, given they're impacted by the same technologies. Though there are some differences, like skipping the cost of the heavy cavalry archer upgrade, the fact they're free so discounts don't matter, and also that even the American civs have access in this case. So it's a similar but not identical ranking. With that, let's first go through the 5 worst Cuman Mercenary ally civs. Starting us off at number 41 out of 45 civs, we have the Slavs. Despite being one of only a few civilizations in AoE2 that actually used Cuman Mercenaries historically, and are in that sense one of the most appropriate, they get us off to a rough start, lacking Bracer, Thumb Ring, and Parthian tactics. That one less attack, less range, lower accuracy, and slower fire rate means they do about a third less damage to low pierce armor targets, and around 16% less against skirmishers, compared to a fully upgraded version. At the same time, there's a few redeeming aspects here, like bloodlines, all the archer armor upgrades, and husbandry. Plus, Slavs can theoretically use their unique tech to discount the stone cost of future castles. Given your number of castles built translates directly into the size of your massive Kipchaks, that is worth acknowledging. Overall though, they're okay for tankiness, but just have a distinct lack of firepower. Next up, we have the Teutons. They have a pretty similar combination of techs, missing Bracer, Thumb Ring, Parthian tactics, and this time add in a lack of husbandry. Of course, with that said, Teutons otherwise lack heavy cavalry archer, which on top of those other techs usually makes that whole unit line a non-starter in the late game. Kipchaks subsequently end up being the best cavalry archer style raiding unit that Teutons ever get, and in that sense gives a Teuton only player a very novel experience, but objectively are just not a good version of Kipchaks themselves. Moving on to the third worst, here we have the Aztecs. They're missing Thumb Ring, Parthian tactics, the final armor upgrade, and for the first time on our list, bloodlines. Now you might expect all of the American civs to land near the bottom of our list for missing the cavalry techs and Parthian tactics, but remember Kipchaks benefit from archer armor, so Inca and Mayan Kipchaks are actually pretty solid with Bracer, Thumb Ring, and all armor upgrades. Aztecs though lack quite a bit of firepower from Thumb Ring as well as durability, so they drop to the bottom tier. In fact, they technically lose to all of the other mercenary Kipchaks in the game, but ultimately do have Bracer, and I think that counts for something. Next up, at number 44, we have the Franks. They're lacking Bracer, an armor upgrade, Thumb Ring, Parthian tactics, and bloodlines. The 20% HP civ bonus does apply, but only gives 9 HP in this case, as remember Kipchaks have low HP to begin with, so a percentage increase isn't exactly ideal. You could theoretically mix your Kipchaks in with Paladins to give something anti-spear, and Franks going Cav Archer in very niche situations isn't unprecedented in competitive settings, but it already feels like Franks have that role pretty well covered between the throwing axemen and hand cannoneers. In fact, arguably the free Kipchaks aren't worth the pop space you could otherwise spend on Paladins in team games. will give some extra points for discounted castles, letting Franks potentially make more of them than other civs in total, and could arguably come up with the largest mass of admittedly terrible units. But now for the worst of the Kipchaks, Franks are beaten, I think, ever so slightly by the Celts. They suffer nearly all of the same lack of techs as the Franks, then dropping the HP bonus but gaining the last armor. They technically beat Aztecs and Franks head to head, but in my opinion lack a saving grace, like Bracer or cheap castles to point to. I suppose they're free and you might as well make them if you have the chance, but again feels like they might be a bit of a waste of pop space by the time they're available. That's the worst of the worst, but now let's flip things around and take a look at the best. Again, keeping in mind that since Cumans lack Bracer, many of these civs actually have significantly better Elite Kipchaks than Cumans. We'll start the countdown with the Vietnamese at number 7. They're missing Parthian Tactics with its benefit to armor and bonus against spear units, which is actually a combination of tech shared by a number of decent archer civilizations all competing for this spot. What Vietnamese have the others lack though is a kicker as good as their extra 20% HP. Technically, you'd think that bonus doesn't apply, as it specifies only archery range units, which this unit is not, but mercenary Kipchaks benefit anyway, as it turns out. They also fit pretty nicely into the Vietnamese game plan as well, given you're likely already researching a lot of these techs, and usually lack a mobile raiding unit with your archer and elephant focus. The anti-ram aspect is also nice for such an archer-focused civ to have, even in a small quantity. Next, at number 6, we have the Saracens. It maybe shows how many technologies Kipchaks require that Saracens reach the top 6 solely due to being fully upgraded. For years, Saracens would have also added in extra bonus damage against buildings for all cavalry archer variants, but remember that was taken away a little while back. As another pseudo-archer stable combo civilization, Saracens are pretty well set up to have a lot of Elite Kipchaks techs already researched in Imperial Age, and to make good use of the free units. Moving on to number 5, we have the Cumans' historically dreaded enemies, in this case apparently turned into excellent allies, the Mongols. While Mongols are missing the final armor upgrade, technically making them less durable than Saracens, and actually losing to Saracens head-to-head, Mongols have an extra civ bonus giving them a 25% faster firing rate. That's a great passive bonus, especially with Mongol Hussars in front to keep your Kipchak safe. Considering a Mongol player on a team map is probably going Mangadai already as well, it becomes just a handful of free units that can easily mix into an existing army, with those two units having similar speed and attack delay, meaning there's no drawback of slowing down either unit by mixing them together. Next up, at number 4, we have the Japanese. Japanese cavalry archers have been fully upgraded for a long time, but always lacked a distinguishing feature until recently when they were given +2 bonus damage against archers, which also applies to Japanese Kipchak mercenaries. That anti-archer bonus then works against enemy cavalry archers as well, in fact letting Japanese Kipchaks beat or tie against every other on this list head-to-head. Obviously, they deal the most damage against archer units, but are still otherwise pretty solid and fully upgraded. The only drawback is unless you're already going for Japanese cavalry archers, you probably won't have Parthian tactics in particular, and realistically, maybe not even bloodlines or husbandry, but in terms of potential, I think they land a little higher than expected. Moving on to number 3, we have the Tatars. Admittedly, this is where it starts to turn into a top cavalry archer civs list, but here we have all relevant upgrades available, as well as some extra flavor, with silk armor, the Tatar hill bonus, and +2 cavalry archer line of sight, all helping out Kipchaks. Throw in that Parthian tactics and thumbring are free, as well as the fact that cavalry archers are often already a game plan for Tatars, and you get a thematically appropriate civ benefiting a fair bit from a Cuman ally. Next up, at number 2, we have the Turks. Again, not only do they have all of the generic relevant upgrades, but then add an extra 20 HP with their very reasonably priced unique tech Sipahi. Not only does that allow them to beat all of the mercenary Kipchaks other than the number 1 civ in Japanese, but there's an argument that 20 HP is even more helpful than an attack boost, simply because you're dealing with a limited number of Kipchaks available, so there's an extra incentive to keep them alive. Turks also have arguably one of, if not the best Genitours, and there's a reasonable argument they're in the best position to benefit from a Cuman ally as well. But I think the number 1 civ wins out ever so slightly, and that is the Magyars. Considering how many Cumans settled in Hungary after being displaced by the Mongols, this is not just historically appropriate, but then fits perfectly into the existing Magyar design and tech tree. In addition to having all cavalry archer upgrades, they become clearly top tier after recurve bow, giving them an extra 1 attack in range, which players often grab for their own cavalry archers anyway. Turks and Tatars have been beat in terms of tanking damage, but being unreachable in the first place with 4+4 range just seems a little better. Especially compared to the Cuman's own Elite Kipchaks, you end up with +2 attack and range. So it feels like you're getting an overpowered version of the unit that was never intended to exist. Magyars then also train them 25% faster as well, so your usual castle production is impacted even less than usual, and is one of the few cases where Cumans get a little help back for their own Kipchaks through a team bonus. For all the same reasons Magyars have, in my opinion, the best cavalry archers today, they also have the best Cuman Mercenaries. Of course, that's just my list. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.